Hello all. Today in this class I would like to discuss about the poem On Killing a Tree. It's an analysis of the poem. Okay. So On Killing a Tree, which is written by Giyu Patel. You know that he was a prominent one of the prominent Indian poet, playwright, painter as well as a practicing physician. Okay. So I have discussed about him in our previous class about his biographies and etc. If you are not gone through that, do check it. It was there in the playlist. Okay, so on killing a tree. So even though it is a simple poem, but it contains a profound meaning. So the poet represents man's cruelty towards nature on killing a tree. Here the tree represents nature in general. Okay, so the poet represents man's cruelty to nature, and he presents a graphic picture of the total annihilation of a tree here. Okay, and he emphasizes the modern man's cruelty towards nature, and that out of his indiscriminate greed and selfishness, what he has done, he destroys nature and its very spirit. We are not considerate about nature, even though it is our mother earth, the environment, the surroundings, the natural resources, everything is precious. But the modern man, out of his selfishness, out of his greed, always destroys these things. Okay, so we can analyze the line by line meaning. The first stanza is like this: It takes much time to kill a tree. Not a simple jab of the knife will do it. It has grown slowly, consuming the earth, rising out of it, feeding upon its crust, absorbing years of sunlight, air, water, and out of its leprous hide, sprouting leaves. So, I told you that it was a simple poem but conveys a profound meaning, right? Here, through the words, through the lines, poet ironically conveys a message that we should not cut trees. So, ironically means what? Irony means what? So, irony means it's a figure of speech, right? It's a figure of speech in which we use witty languages to convey or convey insults or ridicule a person or thing, especially saying one thing but implying the opposite. The meaning is opposite. That is what irony. So here, throughout the poem, we can see the step by step process to cut a tree. But actually, the poet is not intended to uh, convey the meaning how to cut a tree, but he actually is against to cut a tree, and he says that we have to secure these things and we should not cut trees. So he describes how to cut a tree, but actually he conveys a message that we should not cut trees. That is what irony is all about. Okay, so the first stanza is like this. I have read it out. Then we have to look upon some of the words here. uh, jab means what? You have to note it down. Jab means to cut something forcefully. Jab means to cut something forcefully. Then leprous hide. What do you mean by leprous hide? Leprous hide means discolored bark, discolored bark. That is known as leprous hide. And crust, you might know that the crust is the upper layer of earth. Then sprouting leaves, you know that it is to produce new leaves, sprouting leaves. Okay, so it takes much time to kill a tree. Not a simple jab of the knife will do it. So, from the first line itself, he says, it takes much time to kill a tree. That is, it's not an easy task. It's not that much simple to cut down a tree. So here, man realizes that it is not easy to kill a tree because what? Because it grows slowly by consuming the earth. By consuming the earth, the trees grows slowly, rising out of it. How it has grown? By absorbing years of sunlight, years of air, water from the crust of the earth. Okay, and out of its leprous hide sprouting leaves. So it is from the first stanza itself, the poet says, it's not easy to cut down a tree, It is not an easy task to cut down a tree. Why? Because it has grown strong by consuming the earth slowly, It grows up and rises from the crust of the earth, absorbing years of sunlight, air, water. So, in simple words, we can say it takes nutritions from the soil and it grows, and turn to be a big tree. And from its discolored and uneven barks, what happens? The new branches and leaves comes out. Okay, so this is the first stanza that he says it takes much time to kill a tree. That is, it is not an easy task to kill a tree, and not a simple jab of the knife will do it. We cannot cut it down it's that much easily. Okay, and it has grown slowly consuming the things from nature, that is sunlight, water, air, everything that it absorbs and grows strongly. And the new sprouts comes out from the leprous hide. So leprous hide means the discolored bark. From the discolored bark, new branches or new leaves comes out. Okay, so here we can see, I told you that throughout the poem he uses irony. Okay, then here leprous hide is also a metaphor. Okay, leprous hide is also a metaphor. So we can discuss it in the last part of the session. Okay, so the second stanza is like this. So hack can chop, but this alone won't do it. Not so much pain will do it. The bleeding bark will heal, and from close to the ground will rise curled green twigs, miniature boughs, which, if unchecked, will expand again to former size. So, here again, some of the words I have to in means I have to tell some of the meaning of the words here. That hack means what? Hack means cut roughly by striking heavily. Cut something roughly by striking heavily is hack. And chop means, the cut into pieces is known as chop. Then miniature boughs, it's small branches. Okay, so he says, so hack can chop, but this alone won't do it. So he says in the second stanza, he says that cutting the tree roughly by striking heavily blows and chopping actually won't do anything to the enormous tree. From the first stanza itself, he said it's not an easy task. And he again says, hack and chop won't do anything to the enormous tree because it's too difficult to destroy a tree, and it will not feel any pain, and its bleeding bark will heal very soon. Look at the image here, the bleeding bark here. The bleeding bark will heal, and from close to the ground will rise curled green twigs, miniature boughs, which, if unchecked, will expand again to form a size. He says, if we cut a tree and it will bleed, and that bleeding bark will heal very soon. That is the power of nature, that is the power of the tree. And if we cut from the bottom, if we cut from the bottom, that is from close to the ground, what happens? The curled green twigs will start growing with mini branches coming out. So even though we cut a tree from the bottom, it will regrows or it will rejuvenate. The mini branches will come out. And if we cut a branch, even though it bleeds, but later it will soon heal, that is the power. If they are unchecked, they will expand again to their normal size and formal size. Okay, so it is not an easy task to kill a tree. This is what the poet emphasizes. So hack and chop, but this alone won't do it. So mere hack and chop won't do anything to the enormous tree, and not so much pain will do it. The bleeding bark will heal, the bleeding bark will eventually heal. And from close to the ground will rise curled green twigs. If you cut a tree from the bottom, it will again grows. A small twigs, green twigs or miniature boughs will come out. And if unchecked, that will expand again to former size. Okay, so the third stanza is like this. No, the root is to be pulled out of the angering earth. It is to be robbed, tied, and pulled out, snapped out, or pulled out entirely out of the earth cave, and the strength of the tree exposed, the source white and wet, the most sensitive, hidden for years inside the earth. So here, anchoring earth means that is trees are held securely in the with the help of the root in the earth cave, earth crust. And here snapped out means again chopped out. So here in the third stanza, the poet says no. He says no. The chopping or the hack and chop or the cutting of trees not enough to kill a tree. He says no. Okay, the root is to be pulled out. What we have to do, we have to pull out the root. Why? Because the root is the most important part in a plant or in a tree. So what you have to do, the root is to be pulled out. Here we can see that the poet is describing each and every way way to kill a tree, and he describes means graphically he describes these things, but actually it is ironically he is describing these things, because actually he meant not to kill a tree, but he gives explanation to how to kill a tree. Okay, so he says no, this is not done. This is not the way to kill a tree. He says this is not the way to kill a tree, but what we have to do, we have to pull out the root. This is what he says. Out of the angering earth. So he says, he sarcastically or he ironically explains a step by step process here, and he says we have to pull out the root from the angering earth. So in the cave of earth or in the crust, it was safe because it was held by the roots. But when we pulled out the earth, we can totally destroy the tree. Okay, and he says, ironically he says that first, that what we have to do, we have to pull out the root from the angering or holding earth. That actually that is like a mother. Earth is like a mother for a tree, that it is a mother whom the tree holds tightly and securely by the help of roots. And when we pulled it out, eventually the tree will die. He says that it has to be pulled out entirely or tied up with a rope and then chopped into pieces. And once a tree is separated from the earth cave, you know what happens when the source, that is the roots, which is white and wet, which is the most sensitive and hidden part of the tree, when it is exposed, that the most important part is exposed, then the tree loses its strength. This is what he says. So when you pulled out the tree, pulled out the root from the earth crust, the tree loses its strength, because the strength lies in the root, because it earth holds the tree by these roots. Okay, The root is to be pulled out of the angering earth. It is to be robbed, tied, and pulled out, snapped out, or pulled out entirely out from the earth cave, and the strength of the tree exposed. What is actually the strength of the tree? Strength of the tree is the root, the source, white and wet, the most sensitive, hidden for years inside the earth, that is exposed. Now the tree loses its strength. Is that clear? Then the fourth stanza is like this. Then the matter of scorching and choking in sun and air, browning, hardening, twisting, withering, and then it is done. Then it is done, he says. Then the matter of scorching and choking. So, what do you mean by scorching? Scorching means burning in a high intensity. Like choking means to dry up a tree after being uprooted, or deaden the trees by exposing into overheat. Scorching and choking means deaden the trees by exposing into a overheat as the meaning of scorching, choking. Okay, so by scorching and choking, we have to do again and again brutality. It shows the brutality, or it shows the cruelty of man towards the tree. And he pulled out the tree from the earth crust. Then uh, the man exposes these trees to overheat. Okay, of scorching and chalking in sun and air, browning and hardening, twisting, withering, and then it is done. So in the last stanza, the poet says that once the tree has been pulled out or has been uprooted, what happens? It gradually withers. Withers means fade away from life. Okay, gradually that withers and dries up due to the sun and wind, sun and air. And it turns into brownish color, hardens up, twists. Finally, what happens? Finally, sheds off its skins under different weather conditions. Okay, because it is exposed to overheat, and it is exposed to wind, it exposed to everything that is present outside. Okay, because it was that shows the cruelty of man. And then what happens? The process is over. What was the process? Pulled out from the earth crust, then browning, hardening, twisting, and withering, and then it is done. And then the process is over. Now that the tree is killed completely and nothing is left, okay? And nothing is left. The tree is completely killed by man. So we can say that this poem is um, actually shows the cruelty of man towards nature, and he ironically portrays these things and conveys the message that the trees are the essential part and or the integral part of our life. So we have to do what we have to um, we have to sympathize with these trees, and we have to protect it. Okay, so this is all about the poem in general. So here there are some where is that? So here there are some literary devices here. Literary devices, that is metaphor, enjambment. Enjambment is used here. Enjambment means what? Enjambment means a repetition, means a line is um, continued into another line, that is called enjambment. So here the poet uses enjambment here. Then metaphor is there. There is no rhyme. It is written in free verse. It is written in free verse. And the bleeding bark, the metaphor, that is, I told you about the metaphor, leprous hide. Metaphor means what? Indirect comparison. Okay, So here leproside means the uneven color of the surface of the trunk of a tree, that is compared to the skin of a person suffering from leprosy. So indirect comparison is there. So it is leproside is a metaphor. And bleeding bark is also a metaphor, that the sap coming out of the tree where it is which is compared to the bleeding from the wound of a human body. So that is why bleeding bark is a metaphor. And alliteration is there. That is, alliteration means what? The repetition of consonant sounds. So here bleeding bark, b sound is repeated. Okay. So then repetition is also there. Repetition, the word pulled out is repeated in this poem. So the repetition is also used. So actually, what were the literary devices that is used in this poem? Enjambment. That enjambment means when one sentence is actually continues into two or more lines, that is called an enjambment. And here we can see that enjambment throughout the poem. Then metaphors, that is leproside and bleeding bark. Then alliteration and repetition. Okay. So this is all about the chapter on killing a tree.